Hi, I'm Paul Steinle. Welcome to Lecture 7, which we've entitled The Enemies of the People. Well, that's a very flamboyant title, isn't it? I wonder where it came from. I think you probably know. So we live in an era now where the President of the United States has decided to attack the news media by describing them as enemies of the people. Here's what he put on one of his tweets not too long ago. The fake news media is not my enemy, it is the enemy of the American people. Sick. So that's his take on the kind of coverage that he's getting. So who are these people that report the news in the United States? There are tens of thousands of them. There are about 1,000 newspapers. There's about 500 plus television stations where news is reported. There's several thousand radio stations which carry news. And there is, of course, the internet now, which has all sorts of new voices and new sources of reporting. The enemies of the people. So to get a sense of who is out there, a few years ago, my wife and I took a trip across the United States and visited one newspaper in each state in the United States and met some of these people and talked to them about what they do and why they do it. And that was captured in this book called Practicing Journalism. It was published in 2014. I'm going to share with you some interviews with some of these folks and allow you to meet them and see what they have to say about the reasons they got involved in journalism and what motivates them. And you can make up your own mind about whether they are enemies or something else for the people of the United States.
My career is a little bit unusual because I didn't spend a lot of time as a reporter. I started as a copy editor and did a lot of things on the editing side. I kept wanting to be a reporter and kept getting told I was more valuable doing something else. For a brief period, I got to be a police reporter, which was really always my dream. My father was a police officer, and that's really what I always wanted to do. And just a couple weeks into it, I covered my first homicide. And it was a great experience for me because I went and talked to the police lieutenant who gave me the details. And I was very comfortable in that situation. I'd been around cops my whole life. What the guy had to say, how he described his victim, how she got herself in this spot, all made sense in the stereotypes I was used to, you know. And I came back to the office and wrote up my story, and my editor said, well, you need to go talk to the victim's family. And I'm like, why? I mean, this is like your standard homicide. I mean, cop said this, why? He goes, you need to go out there and talk to him. So I drove out there. It was in kind of a rough neighborhood. I was a little bit lost. I was very intimidated. And I kept kind of circling the block. And I had made a decision to go back and tell my boss no one was home. And at that moment, a woman came walking out of the house and waved me down. It turned out to be the victim's mom. And she thought that I must be like a cop or a building supervisor and stuff. And I told her no, that I was from the paper. And she talked to me for a few minutes. And what it taught me was you read a lot of stories, or you may write a lot of stories, you may hear a lot of stories about people being killed. But you should never forget it's someone's daughter, someone's mom. It's always stayed with me.
My first real day in the newsroom without the training wheels here was April 16th, 2007. I had been here for 2 weeks. My first week was in HR training, and my second week was in sort of like just shadowing people. And it was my first day sort of with the training wheels off, being in the newsroom, just a regular day, just sort of kind of figuring out what it was going to be like in the Roanoke Times newsroom, normal day. It was a normal day until about 9 o'clock in the morning. And that was when, a little bit after 9, I guess, we found out about the shootings at Virginia Tech. And everything changed. Everything changed for a very, very long time, and maybe forever. And I was obviously very new to the newsroom, and my contribution there was basically do whatever they need you to do and do whatever you know how to do and don't get in anyone's way. And it was really, I didn't know many people here then because I hadn't been in the newsroom very long. And I learned a lot in the first couple hours even about the place where I had landed and about the people and about the news organization I was working for, because I kept hearing in so many words and so many other words about all the decisions that people were making, from simple things like when to publish names and who to contact and who to talk to. I kept hearing the same conversation over and over again. People saying, this is our community, these are our people, how do we best serve them? And it wasn't put on, it wasn't fake, it wasn't, well, I guess we should probably have this conversation. It was so real and it was so genuine. And I remember I actually wrote to my mom like late that night, because I'd been in the newsroom for like 20 hours, saying that, telling her that I knew I had come to the right place, even under these awful circumstances, because people were asking these questions that I didn't think people actually asked, that I had read about in my textbooks, but that I didn't think that people actually asked in real newsrooms, but they were. And I was hearing these conversations asked by the editor and the Metro editors and reporters saying, how are we going to best serve our community, and how are we going to make sure that tomorrow and next week and next month, that when we run into the people in our community in the grocery store, that we're going to be proud of the work that we've done, and they're going to be able to know that we're serving them in the right way. And that's when I knew that I'd come to the right place, and I was really proud to have been able to work with people like that.
When our president, Albert Hale, came into office, and things started to unravel about some extramarital affair going on in his office, and some dealings with the credit card, misuse of a credit card, and all these expenses that were being spent. On trips, to Paris and all these places where the Navajo people were funding the trips for him, and we really weren't benefiting from it. At least nothing that we could see. And so we reported on those things. And it really was a time where, again, our role as a newspaper, our role within Native press was questioned by our government. They said, why are you writing all these things about our leader, when in fact it's not true? And then we said, well, we're writing about stuff that's based on fact. Look at the financial records, look at the pictures we have, look at, we had information, we had factual information to back us up. But it came to a point though where we were really questioned again about our role. And we had a story that we were going to break about the extramarital affair and the credit card. We were ready. We had enough information to break the story. And that afternoon, I got called into our president's office, and we had a man-to-man talk. No tape recorders, and we had an agreement that we wouldn't talk about what we discussed. But that was with Mr. Hale. And so I left there from his office, thinking like, what am I going to do? Because Albert was a good friend of mine too. We used to play basketball long ago, and I got to know him. And the lady that he was involved with was a former classmate of mine. So they were friends. They're people I knew. But I also knew that the office that they held and the public trust that the people I put into what they were doing. So I came back and you really had to think about some things here. And I thought, what are we going to do? We're going to break the story, or do I hold off on it till we get more information? Come to realize that we had enough. We had enough to break the story. So we did. It came out the next morning. Huge story, and everything took off from there. After that, eventually he had to step down from office. He had to resign from office, or he was going to face prosecution thereafter. So again, we survived. We survived. But it really made me realize that the power that we had and our purpose. And I wish it could have been something better. I wish it could have been something different. But for the most part, that was again, that really stood out in my mind, because from a personal standpoint, it was stressful. It went through a lot of, why am I doing this? Why me, kind of thing. And then I come to realize that, hey, there's a reason why I'm here, and there's a reason why I'm in this position. There's a reason why I got to make this decision, And so I stuck with it. We ran the story, and things just took care of itself. And truth always prevails.
So those are some of the motivations of the people we encountered a few years ago when we went around the country to find out what motivates people in the news industry. If you want to see more of those things, they're available online under a website called whoneedsnewspapers.org, and it's under the heading Epiphanies at the top of the page. There are about 90 of them altogether if you're interested. So that's the story on the people behind the news. Obviously, they're not all like that. Like every field, there are some people that do not meet these standards. But I think a lot of people are. When we did these interviews, we asked people just simply about a time in their life when the power and the purpose of the press became clear to them. And almost all of them immediately had an answer to that question. This was without prompting or any preparation, because it was an important moment in their lives. I think most people in journalism are serious about what they do and try to improve as they do it. So that's my take on it, and the story of who really comprises the enemies of the people.